Welcome back to the Pathfinders podcast, where we dive into the career journeys of great people with exciting stories to tell. Our conversations going to align with the Pathfinders methodology and hit on some of the career maps of our guests along the way. It's a representation of their professional journey, past, present, and future, broken out into roles, skills, accomplishments, educational pieces of it, and some fun stuff as well. The cool part about this is we're also going to highlight some of the people that help them along the way, their personal board of advisors. Sometimes we call this a PBA. We're going to share this on LinkedIn and the other podcast platforms, so be sure to follow, share your thoughts and comments, and maybe something that you learned. Our guest today really likes the quote by Henry Ford: "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." Quick bio. Highly motivated, innovative, full stack, human resources professional. I like that full stack aspect. Usually we think it's going towards a developer there, but HR professional with experience leading talent acquisition, talent management, people analytics, diversity and inclusion, employee relations, learning and development. Okay, there's 6 things. I wonder if there's anything that Brad doesn't do or has not yet done in some capacity. But he's got a passion for driving culture and servant leadership. He walks the walk and talks the talk. Have had multiple interactions with him over the last couple of months. So get ready to learn more from this prior college hockey player and current coach of baseball. Brad, welcome up to the stage and welcome to the show.
Hey, the answer is comp and benefits. I have not done comp and benefits, and I have no desire to do comp and benefits.
All right, so as we get into your career map, we'll see what's on there and what's not on there. Everybody listening, stay tuned for more.
Great to see you, man. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. The way we start off with this is all about you and where Brad started, 20 years ago, right? Whenever you were a little guy growing up, what was that childhood aspiration? What did you want to be when you're growing up?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I started playing hockey when I was 2, so I absolutely had all eyes on becoming a professional hockey player, like many kids, right? Being an athlete was a major focus, and in a lot of ways, I didn't really have a fallback option. It morphed into I wanted to work in professional sports. So when I got to college, the sports opportunity of becoming an athletic director or a general manager of a hockey team or a professional sports team was really a major focus. And I was very fortunate. I got a full ride both to boarding school and to college to play hockey. So my pathway certainly was driven a lot by my childhood desire too. And I fell short of going that next route, but it really did open up a lot of doors for me through what I learned in hockey, getting the opportunity to go and study and experience Culver Military Academy and Bowling Green State University, and to walk out of those things with a lot of learnings and no debt was really, really nice. And it really, hockey's always been a major passion, and still today at 40, I'm, touting out there at 10:30 at night with all the other old guys.
All right. What's the name of your men's league team?
Locomotiva. I don't know why.
Okay, well, watch out if you're in the Western Pennsylvania area playing after everybody else has gone to bed.
That's right.
What number do you wear, Brad?
I'm sorry?
What number do you wear?
17.
17. Okay. Now, who is, if we got some hockey fans listening in, who might you say that you fashion your game after, or depending on their age, fashions their game after you, depending how you look at it?
The only one that might fashion theirs after me is my 6-year-old son, who probably more likely wants to be his mother, who was a former Broadway actress, than his father, which I'm totally cool with, by the way. As a kid, I loved Jeremy Roenick, even though growing up diehard in Buffalo, New York. Jeremy Roenick, who I actually have become friends with over time, just a weird, wonky story that we don't have time for on this, but Pete will catch up on that one. It's a fun one. But was a huge Jeremy Roenick. Brad May, going back in the day there, if anybody in Buffalo is listening, you might remember that name. Pat LaFontaine. So yeah, a lot of the old greats in the early late 90s.
Well, the cool part is by the time this gets published, we'll probably have between 5 and 176,000 listeners. I don't know exactly where it's going to land. So I bet you some of them will be hailing at some point in their life from Buffalo. Back to the scheduled programming. So full ride to boarding school and then over to Ohio, right? For Bowling Green.
That's right.
Right. So what did you end up studying there? other than sports and maybe a couple of other extracurriculars. But what was the degree, and then where did that take you right afterwards?
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Sport management is what I studied. But you know what? Culver, let me rewind a little bit. Culver
Mhm.
Military Academy, where I went to for high school, for boarding school, is an incredible academic school. So actually, my sophomore year, we were on 2020 for having the hardest academics in the country. I
Wow.
did not deserve to be there. Maybe sans hockey, but got an incredible education at Culver, and it's a huge part of who I am today. Bowling Green, going into sport, was really truly because I wanted to learn the business of sports. And so while I played hockey, fun fact about me, not one that was on your list, but I was actually in 11 student organizations, 4 of which I was president of,
Whoa.
on top of being an athlete. And I, from dance marathon to creating a student organization to being a tour guide, you name it. I was the president of the Sport Management Alliance. Surprise, surprise. And so I was highly engaged in all things happening on campus with our alumni, with prospective employers coming on. And so I was really focused on, I knew at some point at one point you just realize you're not making it to the NHL, and I needed to find another path. And I really started to focus on, all right, well, what else has this hockey journey provided me in growth and learning and leadership opportunities? And I was in this program at Bowling Green called the President's Leadership Academy, which is a 4-year program that focused around the tenets of servant leadership.
Yeah.
And that really, from going to military boarding school, I'd maybe neglected that part, where I was studying leadership, to then 4 years in college focusing on servant leadership. It really started to hone a pathway of both the things that I loved about sports, which was, teamwork, camaraderie, leadership, accountability, the things beyond the game, the skill sets that I was learning sort of inside and outside of the classroom in my extracurriculars, and sort of layering all these things together started to build the foundation of what I wanted to become in my career. What I wanted to do, I had no damn clue. Right.
You're
Like
right.
that was still, I knew like the sport thing, but funny enough, because of my sport background, I did some internships and some pro sport teams and things like that. But actually, I decided my first job out of college was at the Westin Hotel in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina.
Mm.
And it
A lot
made
of,
to
lot
like
of
a,
ice hockey down there, right?
yeah, exactly. Tons of hockey. Not a rink on the island. But it was actually kind of a good change of pace for me in that way too. And long story, Starwood Hotels, which is now part of Marriott, but back then was Westin, and many other incredible brands would come to campus and recruit. And I got this opportunity as a recreation intern at the Westin. And it was actually my last requirement before graduating. And so I did that. And frankly, my mindset when I was there was, I'm going to do everything that I can to impress these people to get a full-time job out of this. Cause there was no plan B at that point. Like I was on this pathway, but there wasn't like, all right, well, there's this hard left pathway that I can take either. It was kind of like, all right, see this damn thing through. And so by the end of the summer, I handed in 11 different uniforms. I tarred the roof. I was a bar back at the restaurant. I worked weddings. I was cleaning rooms, all this, just to try to make an impression.
Yeah.
And so the end of that summer comes, this is 2006. The director of HR at the hotel comes up to me and she says, we would love for you to stay full time. P.S. A recreation intern is not a full-time job, not a year-round job. And she's like, we've got something at the front desk, something at the restaurant, but actually I have a job as an HR coordinator on my team, and I think you'd be great for it. And so I called my dad and I said, what does HR do? And then he told me and was like, all right, I don't want to do that. So I actually contemplated turning down the job. But then similar sort of like mindset approach here, and maybe a little of that, whether you think you can, think you can't, you're right, quote, was, all right, what if I twist it? And the things that I love about hospitality, I love interacting with guests and exceeding expectations and making somebody's vacation a memorable experience. Like there's something beautiful in that. What if I could do that for employees every day? Like, what if I could take that same essence of what I'm passionate about and apply it over here in HR and get a learning of the behind the scenes of operating a business, right? It's more of the business than working at the front desk. That's more the operation. So I give it a shot. And here I am 16 years later, 17 years later, whatever it is, have made an entire career pathway in human resources. And a lot of twists and turns and cross industries over those 17 years, but incredibly passionate about what I'm doing and grateful for where it all started.
It's pretty interesting and how you stumbled along that path, and maybe not even stumbled, but just kind of walked along that way, and you didn't really plan to go into it. And I think some of the most influential, impactful, and helpful HR leaders don't necessarily come from an HR background. Some, sure,
Sure.
definitely, but you have all those other lived experiences, and you might have been able to see like, oh, I didn't really like that approach. So whenever I get to be boss for a day or maybe a couple of days, this is how I'd like to go about it. So was that HR manager that initially gave you that job offer? Did that person become a little bit of a mentor to you along the way?
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
100%. Her
How'd
name's
that go?
Her name's Lisa Stout. Candidly, I probably haven't talked to Lisa in 10 years, but I've talked about her on
Hey, Lisa,
podcasts or
what's up?
trainings.
Thanks for your
Lisa's
help.
the best. Lisa's incredible. And what I was very moved by and still continue to be was sort of her servant leadership, her selflessness. And actually, after I was only at that hotel for 15 months, and an opportunity to take a bigger role at the St. Regis in Aspen, Colorado, and then transition quickly from a coordinator into a manager presented itself. And she was the one that encouraged me to do it. Keep in mind, I'm
Wow.
22 years old. I'm living in a resort town. She knew I wasn't there forever. And so she, this is all within the realm of Starwood. And she's like, why don't you go express interest in that opportunity? And I did. And like 6 weeks later, I was living in Aspen, Colorado. And it's because of that type of mindset and approach and leadership that she was encouraging me to see something bigger for myself. And I remember even, some great learnings from her. I remember early on in my HR career under Lisa, I would constantly come to her with questions, right? Because I didn't know
Yeah.
what I was doing. And
Right.
like, 4 weeks ago, I was an intern. Now here I am, an HR coordinator, and people are asking me stuff. And I would constantly come to her with questions on the most minutia, let alone, anything of material substance. And I remember one day she sat me down, like literally, like I was just kind of like at the door. Remember when you used to do that, right? Just like actually come into people's offices. Wasn't that wild?
I remember what
Um,
an office used to look like.
yeah, right. And she sat me down. She's like, Brad, you have 3 questions for me. Like, what do you think the answer is on each of these questions? And so I answered. She's like, go, like, you got it. Like, come to me when you need reassurance. Come to me with like, here's what I'm thinking the right answer should be, but don't come to me for the answers because then I'm just doing your job for you. And like that was 17. I have a terrible memory, by the way. It might be all the hockey. I remember that clear as day. And she's absolutely right. And it's been something that I've tried to really role model with my team. I write it down on a whiteboard, write CSO, Chief Solutions Officer, and then I cross it out. Like it is not your job as a leader to be the Chief Solutions Officer for your team. Your job is to empower and inspire and give the tools, resources, all those things to your team to be successful, to make the right decisions. But if you're making those for them, you're just taking away their accountability and frankly, their what they need to own. So thus again, accountability in the results of those decisions. And that's something that was instilled in me in, job number one and helped, her graciousness helped me along that pathway to jobs number 2, 3, 4, and 5.
So as you migrated from the East Coast to the West Coast, you're getting into some of these kind of managerial roles. Maybe you're playing a little bit more hockey in Colorado,
Definitely.
but talk a little bit more about how you put servant leadership. Right, you talked about some of that in boarding school and some in college. What did that mean to you? How did that get into action? And maybe also put some of the sports learnings in there as well. I think there's so much. I'm a basketball guy myself. I couldn't skate to save my life, so please don't ever ask me to go out on the ice with you unless you want a good laugh. But let's talk a little bit about the servant leadership piece and the sports piece on there too.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of fundamental foundation of servant leadership is your success is derived through the success of others, and so uh, your focus as a leader is to enable your team and empower them to be successful every single day. And
Yeah.
while I didn't lead a team, and I was in a sort of programmatic. I was at a training and recruiting manager role.
Okay.
I knew both, sort of ostensibly as human resources, you're looked in somewhat of a leadership way, right? Because they come to you for sort of major people decisions and all that type of stuff. And you have a lot of influence. And if you can use that in a really thoughtful and guiding and supportive way, you can really be highly successful and move well beyond the transactional administration of human resources of old. And I hated that part. Hated the filing the paperwork and the doing that. I realized why it's important, but like that was not what I was there to do. So I really tried to hone into what I learned, extracurriculars, what I learned on the ice, what I learned academically with servant leadership, and trying to, I was 22 as the training and recruiting manager of a 5-star 5-diamond hotel. And I remember the director of HR, when she interviewed me, she's like, what are you going to bring to the table to a general manager or somebody that's worked in this industry for 20 years and has gone to all these different 5-star 5-diamond hotels? And I said, there's no way I can even try to replicate their expertise. So that's not what I'm going to try to bring to the table. What I will bring is an intellectual curiosity. I will bring a passion to help understand what their opportunities, what their challenges are. And then the areas where I can have subject matter expertise, not, whether it's in 5-star service trainings or in St. Regis brand standards, I am going to know that better than anybody. And if I can bring those things together, that's where I can add value. So I'm not going to try to better understand what exceeding this one guest's expectations or how to better financially plan or what we should be doing for the peak season in Aspen, Colorado. I have no business playing in that space, but I can do everything else that sort of supplementally helps them make those types of decisions and be in service of our leaders and of our employees to help them be successful every day. And so I just tried to apply that same approach and mindset. We're sort of very early on in my career here. That applied early then to when I went to Atlanta, Georgia, and went to Starwood Corporate, and then moved, very fortunately to Madison Square Garden in my first director role. And it's just using sort of that same foundational methodology has always been, I guess, sort of at my roots.
You touched on something that is really helpful for a lot of the listeners that might be earlier in their career and they might not yet have a title. You were able to grow and work with people whenever you were not older than them. You were not above them on the org chart. But how can we lead without a title? And I think this comes to, some of the other learnings from sports as well, right? If your shot's not going in, how can you set more screens? How can you, be the glue guy in other capacities? But talk to us about how you were able to do that earlier on, and then maybe migrate into a little bit more of how you incorporate this with your teams and empower them to, be able to lead without a title.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think what I recognized early on too was, every leader can't do everything, right? And how can I had early conversations with some of my directors of, that bottom 20% of the things that you can't get to, that you don't want to get, how can I take that from your plate? I can make your life easier while simultaneously giving me more exposure, giving me more influence. And I was very willing early on to ask the questions that others weren't willing to ask. I started to allude to a couple of things that I highly value, and this is a little fast forward, but I even do some public speaking on this today. Like the 3 things that I value the most in professionals that I've tried to exemplify throughout my career is emotional intelligence, intellectual curiosity, and agility. And so I've just for 20 years tried to bring those things to the table, because what that enabled me to do was I was never coming to the conversation with senior leaders as a junior employee with, here's what you need to do and why I know better than you. I came to the approach of, is there a different way, or have we thought, what else are you thinking about? Like the intellectual curious question type of thing that just spawned discussion, not trying to create solutions, not being the chief solutions officer. I'm trying to create environments where people can have thoughtful conversations that ultimately lead to the right solution. Because guess what, too, especially 20 years later, I don't have all the solutions. Not even close. Not even close. But I see my role now as a senior executive still doing that same thing. It's just, I was doing it maybe going up the ladder before. Now I'm doing it at my peer level or for my team to help create those types of cultures and environment where people can be intellectually curious, where they can try and fail, where we're not operating based on a risk averseness, and where people bring a lot of passion and energy to the work that they do. And I felt like if I was doing that with our leaders, that becomes magnetic. People want to surround themselves with people that think that way, that may think a little differently, not in a an argumentative or in a challenging the status quo for challenging sake, but in a like, this is an always find a better way type of mindset. And I just need those people around, right? Like I hire that way. And I tried to be that person to the leaders in the company when I was at a more junior level in my career.
I think we can build on a lot of those things when we go from the organizational boss, peer, manager, employee, direct report aspect, but also to mentor mentee relationships,
Yeah.
right? Asking those questions. I'm sure that we have to have a whole lot of psychological safety to get into some of those tough pieces, right? To be able to speak freely. So, these are some of the things that are coming to me along the way. But, we can incorporate those practices and principles to everything that we're doing. Don't just wait for, a job interview to brag about these pieces. Let's see how we can incorporate those right now. Brad, let's talk a little bit about kind of where you are today and what's next as well. And let's figure out, as we look at that aspect of the career map, right, thinking about some of those skills, the accomplishments, and maybe there's some certifications that are kind of recent past and maybe on the horizon too.
Yeah. So I'll sort of fast forward the career journey from here. So I spent 7 years with Starwood Hotels, at different hotels and then the corporate headquarters. As I alluded to, I then got an amazing opportunity. So I did get to go work in sports
Yeah.
for a professional hockey team. I was the head of HR for the Knicks, the Rangers, and the Liberty at Madison Square Garden.
Hold on. Who were the best players on the Knicks at the time?
Carmelo Anthony,
Oh,
and Amari Stoudemire by far. They
oh
still were
my God.
terrible, but those were good names.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was probably fun to watch.
J.R.
And it's
Smith, yeah,
MSG.
yeah,
Jeez,
right.
man.
And I got that opportunity at 27, and it's something I never thought would be a possibility, frankly. And
Mhm.
I moved into the city, met my now wife Jessica. We moved out of the city, and I went to work for Gartner, an incredible HR technology research and advisory company. We were on massive growth when I was there. We literally acquired CEB, so we doubled overnight at one point in time. Went from 7,000 people to 15,000 people the next day when you woke up. And led, I was one of the senior talent acquisition leaders of a 750 person talent acquisition team, which is bonkers.
Wow.
I then got my first head of role as the VP of talent for World Wrestling Entertainment. So back to sports and entertainment. Yes, WWE, the Vince McMahon, John Cena, Undertaker part of the world. That's a whole other podcast.
Who's your favorite? What action figures did you have on your desk or on your shelf when
All
you were
time,
there?
Ultimate Warrior, Sting, British Bulldog, yeah, some of the old guys. Yeah,
I've heard
that,
of one of those. I believe you
yeah,
on the other.
yeah. That's right. You're so much younger than me. Damn it. Um, but I was there for 2 years, leading the talent functions, acquisition, diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Yeah.
which was really interesting doing that, both as a male that checks no boxes, also during the time of George Floyd and a big
Yeah.
surge in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's something that I am incredibly passionate about. And, again, maybe a side episode there, but I was really honored to lead that for the company. We
Real
were,
quick on that one, I'm just
yeah,
going to keep interrupting you, and you
please.
can not allowed to get mad at me for it.
No.
So if we are, somebody that doesn't check those boxes of diversity, how'd you go about getting started in that? Right, my background's from defense contracting, and let's face it, there's a lot of older white guys
Yeah.
in that space, and you might mean well, but what did you do to succeed and flourish in that group? Let's just dive into that one a little bit.
Well, it was interesting. So I was there for maybe 2 months or so, and there was no head of DE&I at WWE. And this is before the George Floyd, but a lot of companies really playing in this space. And I had created a lot of DE&I programs in my past spaces. Starwood Hotels military veteran recruiting program, very distinct female talent acquisition strategies for sports at Madison Square Garden. I oversaw all D&I recruiting at Gartner, and we were doing 4,000 hires a year. So very, very thoughtful strategies to each of those, and some great external partnerships. So when I came to WWE and it was void, I just saw a pretty open opportunity and something that was clearly a major opportunity for the company. And we were doing really well in the ring. Women's wrestling in the ring, both in pay and in time on screen, had essentially become parity to men years ago, which is very, very different than women's soccer or basketball, which fortunately are becoming really positive over the past couple of years. But so it just felt like a lot of low-hanging fruit. So I put together a strategy for why we should add a head of diversity, presented that to the senior leaders, and they said, agreed, but we're not going to add a head count. You're it. And I was like, oh, okay. That was not
what
the
you asked
intention.
for.
I know, right? And so what I needed to do was come into it with a lot of intellectual curiosity and emotional intelligence. I needed to recognize that I was not the target demographic of a lot of this effort, and be super comfortable that my role in this was to be a leader and a courageous advocate for those that have not had the opportunities that maybe I have been afforded in my career because of how I look or where I come from. And I do not come from a family of wealth. I could not have afforded either one of the educational opportunities that I had alluded to earlier if it wasn't for scholarships in hockey, thankfully. But I certainly recognize my privilege as a white male in this country. And so, you have to be very honest about that and be very comfortable being the sort of minority in the room. I would go to diversity conferences and be the only white male in the room.
Yeah.
And that was a really amazing opportunity to put myself in the shoes of others. And I used to sort of tongue in cheek say that I am going to work so hard in this space that my white male son is going to have a real difficult time getting a job one day. Because I was so passionate about driving this space and filling in the inequities that have just historically, that's well documented, again, a long, long conversation, but I'm not sitting here calling out things that are just untrue or unrecognizable. Look at census data, look at your statistics, look at your employee population, look at who's watching the show. The diversity of the people watching the show did not match the diversity of the people that worked in the corporate headquarters that were making the decisions. And just tying those two things together and being willing to be courageous around it and creating platforms for people that may have been marginalized for whatever diversity reason in the past, creating platforms for them to come forward and enable them to be successful in the company and, do the right things from an equity perspective to help foster that more inclusive culture. So it was not easy by any means. And I had to answer, the questions to that a lot of times. And I totally understood, hey, why is the white man ahead of diversity at this company?
Yeah.
I got pretty good at answering that question. So I think I was able to overcome that. But it was also that I was willing to step into this space when, frankly, that company had been around for decades before me, and that job had never existed. I was the
Step
one that
into the ring. Throw the other pun out there. I was waiting for you to say it. I'll help you.
Good point.
Yeah. Okay. So after having 74 other hats at WWE, you took your talents elsewhere, and at some point you got to the Pittsburgh region.
Yeah. So I now am the head of talent for Anywhere Real Estate, which you probably don't know the name of the parent company, most listeners, but we are the largest residential real estate company in the world, parent to brands like Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Sotheby's, Corcoran, Better Homes and Gardens, ERA, so on and so forth, and have across all sort of ancillary services, title, escrow, mortgage. So basically, if you're buying a house, title, mortgage, refining, relocating with Carter's relocation, we can do all of that for you in one seamless transaction.
Can we call you if we want to buy a house? Did you get your real estate license along the way?
I didn't, because we can't practice and be an executive at the same time. So there was no real value in me doing that.
Hey, I had to just ask.
No, yeah. I would, frankly, it's the type of thing that would be an awesome retirement gig. Like, I would love to do it, but man, those agents are
put it on the career map
and hustle. That's right. Yeah. Put it on the end. That's right. Because man, they can hustle and do some incredible work and have to navigate legal complexities and emotions of every person, right? It's one of the most emotional experiences of your entire life, buying or selling a house, especially if you've never done it before. So there, you are as much therapists as human resources professionals are too at the same time.
a whole we might have to have a whole season of just the Brad show, where we go into a bunch of different topics. Couple of other pieces here. um, you're super busy, you've been wearing a lot of hats, you talk about servant leadership. Mentorship is a big aspect of the things we do at Latitude, and you see a lot of successful companies. I think the new statistic, Brad, is 98% of Fortune 500 companies now have some kind of a mentorship program, whether it's run by Excel or something, more elegant, right? That's, to the details. But the question to you is, how the heck did you make time whenever you're super busy for you to grow and learn from some mentors, but then also to pay it forward? So up, down, side to side.
Yeah, you know what? I told myself a long time ago that I got to get rid of the vernacular of making time. We don't make time, we make choices.
Yeah.
There is literally no capability of any human being ever on this planet to make time.
Hermione
It is,
Granger had that time turner. I don't know if you're a Harry
yeah,
Potter
exactly.
person.
Yeah. Jesus Christ may have had some bad, but beside from that, right? Like, we don't make time, we make choices. Pete knows this. I wasn't able to attend an event a couple of weeks ago that I would love to have done some mentoring and or networking rather. But I coach my 6-year-old son's baseball team, and I coach the hockey team, and I host my own podcast on a totally unrelated topic. In addition to being a Fortune 500 senior executive, I make and frankly, I would like to say I'm a very good dad and very good husband, and I'm very available to my family. But you make choices in
Yeah.
how you choose to spend your time. I hit the gym 4 days a week, right? Like, these things are important to me. So in order to be able to hit the gym, I go at 6 a.m. And in order to, I also don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life harmony.
Yeah.
That there is no equal, if you're trying your damnedest to get that seesaw to level out and be balanced, inevitably one thing will make the scales tip and you feel out of balance. How do you find harmony in your life and recognize, and fortunately, be surrounded by great leaders, great teams, and a great culture that can enable you to do that? I go coach my son at 4:40 on Thursdays. That means I have to be on the ice at 4:40. That means I have to leave my house at 4 o'clock. Those are business hours, right? But yeah, right. But
Finally.
I've created enough of a culture in my organization and my team and a relationship with my boss, and my work product has proven itself that those things I will deliver 100% of the time, regardless of the hours that I work. There'll be weeks that I put in 60, 70, 80, 100 hours a week. I will deliver. I will be available whenever necessary. But in order to get the best out of Brad has to have harmony.
Yeah.
I have to have the things that prioritize my life, because I also don't do a good job of, there's a big blur between Brad professionally and Brad personally. There's very few things you could ask me on this pod that I would not answer personally. And that's an honest fact. There's very few things that my employees can ask me that would be across the line. And I very openly share with my employees a lot about me personally, because I just bring my whole being, my whole self to work every day. And so I have to bring that harmony. And so back to your point around, mentorship and making the time, in making the choice, I get energy out of that. I get energy out of mentoring other people. I get energy out of learning from other people. On a, what is it called? I got to look at the actual title. Once a month on Fridays, I have it's sort of tongue in cheek, a great HR meetings of the minds. And it's with 3 other awesome HR executives that I've known throughout my career, never actually worked with, but have met at industry events or, have been connected through mutual connections. And we meet once a month and we talk about the world of HR, and we sort of bounce things off each other. Hey, I'm dealing with this thing, or hey, I'm going to be recruiting for this job, or how are you guys playing in Gen AI, right? Like, we spend time talking about these things, and they're part of my board of advisors. And I make a choice. Does that make sense for me to do that once a month from 1 to 2 every Friday, once a month? No, I could probably be doing other things work-wise, but you'll also find, and this is, a fortunate part is, your career grows, you spend more time thinking than doing. And I am disproportionately compensated on thinking. And so the more that I understand and talk to people, go to conferences, meet with employees, mentor, and I've been in our formal mentor programs, both as a mentor and a mentee. But if you look at that as a check the box, I need a mentor because Pete's book told me I should have a mentor, or my old my dad said I should have one, or it just feels like the corporate thing,
Yeah.
then you're going to get out of it what you expect to get out of it.
Right.
For me, that is the energy that I need to continuously be excited about the work that I do, to stay connected with people. I get fuel out of that. And so there's not a like, I got to make time to go have a mentor conversation like that. That's like going to the gym. That's my mental gym, if you will. And so I, it's a mindset shift. And I realize like that sounds very panacea. Like that's not easy for everybody. And especially if I'm, at a job where my hours are monitored and clocked and all that type of stuff. So I realize I'm speaking in from a personalized perspective, but what is not a personal perspective, at least from my personal perspective, is that it is a choice, not a something you cannot make time. You cannot make a 25th hour in the day.
Not enough time is not a good enough excuse.
Mm,
Hey, let's
that.
dive deeper on the piece you said, that book that that Pete guy wrote. How's that methodology of that career map personal board of advisors helpful to you? Where do you see the value in it? You think it'd be good to have something like that earlier on in your career, Brad?
100% to have it early on in your career. I mean, especially because a lot of times you're flying by the seat of your pants. And so, you only can go based off the available information that you have and the people that you trust as influencers. And so I think one, very valuable early on in your career, but also very valuable at any point in time in your career. It's interesting around a career map, because if you would have told me 5 years ago, so 5 years ago, I would have been at Gartner. If you would have told me that I would have then gone to World Wrestling Entertainment and then a real estate company that I'd never heard of and worked fully remote based out of Pittsburgh, I would have thought that was crazy. But also, if you would have said the 5 years before that, I would have been Madison Square Garden, that seemed crazy too. So who knows what the next 5 years for me look like? I've never been the 5-year plan, but I have the things that I know are my core tenets. I know the things that I'm passionate about that I want to continue to invest in and grow and develop, and sort of the longer term pathway, but not necessarily the goal or the in 5 years I need to be X. I've just never been motivated by that. And that may work for a lot of people, but having a roadmap, knowing clearly the direction that I'm going, how I can execute getting there, what are the digestible chunks to get there, right? That's, you don't just wake up one day and run a marathon. You train every day and you do the sprints along the way, or the sequencing along the way, to make yourself successful in a long-term marathon. And that board of advisors, I mean, that is no joke. I mean, I was on a call with a gentleman that owns a consulting firm literally right before this, who is very much a mentor of mine. And that's not just, placating for the pod. Like, that is actually, I was on that call. That's why I was 2 minutes late with you. I have those calls monthly with the other gentleman that I was referring to, who I'm going to see at the Gartner event in 3 weeks. That is something that I take high stock in, because ultimately, otherwise you can still find yourself on a lonely island in a world that feels lonelier than it ever did, especially if you are in remote work. You need that board of advisors and having a very clear pathway of where you're going in order to have any chance to find your way there.
So the listeners might not know this, but 25 cents gets donated to a charity of somebody's choice every time Brad says the word path. And so the title is Path, right? So put it out there, Pathfinders, Pathways, Path along the way. So I appreciate that. Hey, Brad, we're going to get into the quick fire questions here. You have 17 and a half seconds to answer each of these, so we can still get everybody out of here by 15 minutes
Very
ago.
precise.
All right. So this is going to get into, what's the book that you love reading or recommend most?
None. I'm not a reader. I'm a podcast guy. I love podcasts.
Hit it to us. What do you listen to?
Honestly, I mostly do podcasts to take my mind off of stuff. So I love Smartless, the Will Arnett, Sean Astin, not Sean Astin, Smartless. It's comedy. And then, sadly, I like the gory stuff too, like the murder type of stuff. That's awesome.
Interesting. Right in time for spooky season. Best professional advice you've been given or you have delivered?
Don't be the chief solutions officer. Right. I'm bringing that back. Like, it truly is. It's, if you can adopt that understanding as a leader, and even as an employee, that if you're looking for that person to provide you every answer, you are never going to become that person. And if you're always the person giving the answers, you're never going to empower your team to become more than they are today.
Love it. Brad, B-R-A-D, Kogut, Kogut. That's Brad with just one D. Sorry about that. Find him on LinkedIn. And I think it's important to learn a little bit more about what he's doing. He alluded to the other podcasts. We're not going to have enough time to get into it here. Brad, whenever this goes up, please post some links to the other work that you're doing. That hits a special place for you. And I want to make sure that our audience and listeners have a chance to see that other side of you and support a very impactful mission. I'm going to do a quick recap here, and then we're gonna get off of here. So, Brad, thanks for joining us today. Started playing hockey at 2 years old, and it was sports or bust for you, on and off the ice, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Although you did stay in sports for your major through undergrad. Leadership at the military boarding school to a 4-year learning around servant leadership. That was huge for you. And then you transition from hockey to the hotels, 11 jobs, down selected to 1 into that first HR coordinator gig. And we want to give a TBT thank you to Lisa as one of the OG mentors for you. East Coast experiences transitioned out to Aspen, Colorado. And I love the advice of leave the title of CSO at the door, Chief Solutions Officer. Empower your people. Accountability is critical. And you brought your intellectual curiosity and passion for helping people in, your 75 different roles that you had, even though it might have only been 11 or 12 job titles along the way, then to Georgia and MSG, asking what you can take off the boss's plate, and you continue to bring that up, asking questions, right? Really valuing EQ as on your journey. Intellectual curiosity came up along, and agility. Then over to Gardner, where you helped the organization double in size, all thanks to you. So congratulations again. Hopefully there was a payoff for it. And then the VP of Talent at WWE. You are a courageous advocate for DEI. And I love the quote that we don't make time, we make choices. Find that work-life harmony. And as you continue growing in this executive role, you're doing more thinking than doing. So, Brad, thanks for sharing your story around hockey, hospitality, human resources, honesty, and harmony.
Look at those. Who needs ChatGPT when you got Pete? Those are great. It's been an honor to be here. I really enjoyed the time.